Hi, how you doing? This is John Pielli. I'm happy to be joined by former Major League pitcher Bill Denehy. And I just wanted to ask you a couple questions if it was okay with you.
Absolutely.
All right, so your Major League debut, it was in 1967. You came out there, had a solid game. Had what, 8-9 strikeouts in the game?
8 strikeouts.
If you can, just go over a little bit about what it was to you to be on that mound and what you remember about that particular day.
Well, it was a Sunday afternoon game. It was in Connie Mack Stadium in Philadelphia. I remember, warming up, and John Sullivan was catching me as I was warming up. Back then, they used to have a mound right alongside the dugout that you would warm up on, not in the bullpen like they do, today. And I was, throwing a little bit and everything. All of a sudden, he grabbed the ball, pointed to it, and then threw it back to me. And I had been throwing a half a dozen pitches with a Band-Aid on it. Didn't even feel it. So I guess you could say I was a little nervous, or
Of course.
Johnny Briggs was the first batter I faced in the big leagues, left-hand hitting first baseman. I struck him out, and I ended up striking out 8 batters that day, which tied Tom Seaver's first game when he pitched against Pittsburgh. Now, that was in 67 until, and you might have to check this to make exactly sure, but I think it was until 2000, either 11, 12, or 13, one of those years. That record stayed until the Matt Harvey broke it.
Yeah, Matt Harvey in 2011.
2011, okay.
Yeah.
Well, that record, even with Doc Gooden and John Matlack and Jerry Kuzman and, on and on and on and on, those 8 strikeouts as a rookie pitcher in his first game stood as the Mets record and everything. It was a nice, warm day. I'd say it was probably in the upper 60s or so, and I pitched pretty well. I didn't have the command that I had in spring training, but the thing that I'll never forget about that is I ended up walking, and it was funny because I was always told, Dick Grote was the shortstop at the time for the Phillies, and he said, don't walk him because you don't want to face Richie Allen, Dick Allen, with anybody on base. And I think the 3 previous times up, I walked Grote, but I got Allen out. Might have been the first 2 times and got Allen out. But anyways, this next at bat, I walked Grote for the 3rd time, and I threw him a slider. I got to the point where I don't remember exactly what the count is, but I think I was either 1-1 or 2-2 with him. And in Connie Mack Stadium, for those people who don't remember it, it was 440 feet to dead center field.
Wow.
They had they had double deck stands that went all around until almost dead center field. So you had, probably a 6 to 8 foot wall, then stands, and then the second deck, more stands, then the roof. And they had 3 signs that were up on top of the roof. The one in dead center field was a Coca-Cola sign. And Richie Allen hit a line drive, and I mean line drive, okay, that on the way up hit that sign.
Wow.
So that's 440 feet. I'm going to say at least 100 feet or so, up to where the sign was. And it was rising. If it didn't hit that sign, that ball would have went to Delaware. So and I ended up getting beat 2-0 in that game. So that was my first start.
Yeah, and looking back on it, obviously just an outstanding way to start out. I got to ask you a Gil Hodges question. Obviously, you were traded for him. Gil getting inducted into baseball's Hall of Fame this week. Is there anything in your head that kind of points to it in regards to a feeling one way or the other?
Well, first of all, I'm very happy, for his family to finally get Gil in there. I think he was certainly deserving as a player, and certainly with the managerial job he did with the '69 Mets, gave him the added, status to be able to get into the Hall of Fame. The only regret that I had with him was that the Washington Senators played the New York Mets in '68 in spring training.
Okay.
And the day before we played, a writer by the name of Steve Jacobson, who worked for Newsday at the time, came up to me, introduced himself, and said, who do you think got the better of the deal? The Senators getting you or the Mets getting Gil Hodges? And my answer was very simply that, if Gil comes in and does a good job as manager, gets them out of last place, moves them up in the standings, and I end up not making a team, get sent to the minor leagues and everything, then it'd be the Mets. But if, he takes over that team, they stay in last place, and I end up making the rotation and, win 10 games or something, then I'd say the Senators got the best of the deal, best year.
Yeah, so in other words, it's not determined yet.
Right, absolutely. Well, I didn't realize this at the time, but they have back page editors,
Yeah.
okay, that want to, they're trying to sell newspapers and everything. And what the story or what the headline said was, Denehy says Washington gets better of the deal. Okay?
Of course they did.
Yeah, and the next day they had me take some pictures with Gil Hodges, and he was a big man, had huge hands. And he shook hands, and they said, say something to him, Gil. And he says, I saw the story in the paper this morning. Is that how you feel? I hadn't seen the story. I didn't even know what the hell he was talking about and everything. And I really feel that, I feel bad about the fact that I never had a chance to sit down and explain to him what I said and how I said it, and it wasn't.
And you were basically set up by the newspaper.
Right.
Absolutely. And once again, joined right here by Bill Denehy, former Major League pitcher. Bill, one more question I want to ask you is, you came out of Connecticut. You obviously have a strong work ethic. Became a solid pitcher, in the minor and major leagues. Is there anybody that you could point to over your time that you felt was a really good influence on you from, learning how to pitch? Maybe somebody at some level gave you a little bit of advice or helped you out?
I would have to say probably the one person that was most influential with me was my dad. It's funny because I'm an only child, and my father had really bad legs. He had several varicose veins operations, and he worked in the shipping department at International Silver Company and everything. And I remember he would come home and I would have his glove. He, played first base and pitched, and when he was playing, I guess, I don't know where he played, whether it was high school or whatever. But I'd have it right on the stoop of the stairs going into the kitchen. And I'm sure when he drove home after a long day at work with his legs killing him, that he saw those gloves and said, oh, shit. He's going to want to play catch. And sure enough, I'd come out, Dad, can we have a catch? And, he'd always say to me, he says, make sure you throw the ball up, okay? Don't bounce any balls and everything. And I'll tell you what, inevitably, I couldn't help it. I was wild as a kid. I had some mechanical problems. And I would bounce one in and hit him in the shins, and he would swear, and that was the end of our catch and everything. But what he taught me that day, or during those times, was he would throw the ball to me, and he'd say, I'm going to throw you an in-shoot. That's what he called it back then, in-shoot. That's a sinker today. An outshoot was a slider. A drop was an overhand curveball, and then you had your regular curveball. And he would throw these things, and I was like, how'd you do that, Dad? How'd you do that? And he always told me it was finger pressure. Yeah. Okay, put the finger on a ball, get the pertinent grip, and then be able to turn it like that. So I had kind of a working knowledge of that, a little bit, even though I was wild, you know, when I went into high school and stuff like this. The other thing he did is he gave me a book, my first book on pitching. It was by Sal Magley.
Okay, yeah, the barber.
And, yeah, the barber and everything. And so I read that book and kind of like coached myself a little bit. But he was the most influential. And he was also my Little League, you know, he was the assistant coach in Little League. He was the assistant coach my first year in Legion. And the business manager my last year in Legion and everything. And I just want to end, you know, this thing with, you know, I mean, I just owed him. He was, everyone has a story about their dad and everything. I had a great dad.
That's
Not a
great.
good dad, you know, I had a great dad. And one thing that I'm proud of that I think may never ever be broken is that in my senior year in high school, I was 7-2 and we won the Class B state championship.
Okay.
I was 9-0 in Legion. Okay, we came in second to Bristol in the Legion state championship. So I was 16-2 for the season. But here's the two parts that I'm really proud of. I pitched a total between Legion and high school of 151 innings. Okay, if you double that, obviously it's 302.
Yes.
I struck out 288.
Oh, wow.
288. And in the Legion, you know, where you're allowed to have 12 innings of pitching, I pitched 11 innings, 33 possible outs. I struck out 27. So I look back and, you know, I just say that I wouldn't be anywhere near where I would be today if I didn't have the, you know, my dad come home that day and play catch with me and teach me a little bit, you know, and then give me the fortitude to be able to work through my control problems and able to, you know, better myself and eventually sign and get to the big leagues.
Hey, I appreciate the time, Bill. Thank you very much.
Hey, listen, my pleasure. So.